All right, now once again, it's time for my Ben Buzz Top 25. So let's address the elephant in the room. Notre Dame's not on here, I know. I'd like them to have a winning record first and just to look more dominant going forward. And if they blow out Boise State, I'm going to give them some more consideration. But they don't have any quality wins, and they have quality losses, but that's not great for resume building. And I'd like them to have a positive record before I start putting them here. And Illinois is another team that I thought about, but that embarrassment is just too much. I had to leave them off. And then teams like Washington and Maryland were close as well. But this is what I kind of landed on. So I landed on Memphis at 25 again. They had another dominant performance. They had that victory against Arkansas, which I know doesn't look great now, but they are undefeated, and I think they do deserve that spot. And I think this is where maybe some people will disagree because Notre Dame blew out that same Arkansas team, but that was after the Arkansas team also stopped believing in the team as well. And you could say maybe the domino effect of Arkansas losing to Ole Miss and then Memphis kind of led them to actually get blown out because now the coach is fired. So maybe that's part of it, but any way you want to slice it, Memphis is undefeated. They have an out-of-conference win, and, Memphis is one of the top players in the American, and they are undefeated. That's kind of where they land for me. Then I had South Florida. South Florida is really good. Honestly, I want to put South Florida higher. It's just the loss and the fact that they weren't competitive in it, but Miami is one of the best teams in the nation, so I think that's nothing to sneeze at, but I do slide them up there. And they had that dominant win against South Carolina State, and then they just had a bye week. I still think they're good, and they might be the winner of the American. We'll see what happens when South Florida plays Memphis in a few weeks. Then we had the Virginia Cavaliers, and I didn't really know where to put them. It was a little tricky because all of a sudden now it's just got to rank Virginia because that Florida State win was just so impressive, and I ended up sticking them at 23. I think that's about where they should be, and maybe you can make the argument they should go higher, but that's where I landed on them, and I ended up putting them at 23. That win against Florida State was just so impressive. We'll see how their season goes going forward, especially when they go on the road at Louisville this week. Then at number 22, I put the Sun Devils of Arizona State. Arizona State is way better than we've been giving them credit for. Even after they lost, I still had them ranked because look where Mississippi State is. They're still a good team. And that Mississippi State game was rough, but Arizona State was on the road, and they lost that game, and now they've beaten Baylor. They just beat TCU when they were ranked. Arizona State is good, and I feel like we need to pump the brakes on the narrative that Arizona State's not like what they were last year. And even though I agree, and I don't know if they're going to win the conference, I would be surprised if they did, especially with teams like Texas Tech kind of taking that mantle in the driver's seat. But they're definitely still one of the bigger players in that conference, especially since their loss is out of conference to the team I have ahead of them in Mississippi State. Now, Mississippi State had a rough loss against Tennessee at home, and it was in overtime. They really could have won that game. It was unfortunate, but I still think they're a good team. They beat that Arizona State team, and they hadn't lost in another game, and they have a tough schedule going forward because now they have to go on the road and play Texas A&M. Very tough schedule. I still think they're a really solid team, and I think Mississippi State isn't getting the type of credit they deserve because even before they lost that game, they were never ranked. They were in the coaches poll one time, but they were never in the AP top 25. That just shows that the AP does not know ball. It's really ridiculous. But after the loss, they fall to 21 for me. Then at number 20, I had Georgia Tech, and I wanted to put them higher, but that Clemson win does look worse. I get that. And then also they really should have lost to Wake Forest, so I do drop them because it was close, and I feel better about some of these other teams. I still think Georgia Tech's good, but I'm going to need kind of like a prove-it game, kind of like when just a few weeks ago Iowa State was way too close with Arkansas State. I dropped them, but then I was like, you got to prove it, and then they dominated Arizona. Same thing with Ole Miss. They were too close with Kentucky and Arkansas, and then they proved it against Tulane and dominated them, and then they also just beat LSU. Ole Miss is really good, but regardless, I just need to see more from Georgia Tech because that game was really something that they probably should have lost, and Georgia Tech really needs to look at that and kind of be like, okay, we need to resituate ourselves, and we need to use that as like a warning to be like, oh man, we should have lost. That's really needs to be a wake-up call for this team so they can lock in, but I had to drop them because they didn't look great in that game. Then I had Michigan at 19, and they had that great game against Nebraska, and we'll see how Michigan goes going forward, but I still think they're pretty solid, and I think they're doing a lot better since that Oklahoma game. So we'll see how they progress going forward, but I really like Michigan. They land at 19 for me. Then I had Texas at 18, and this one, again, is probably controversial, but I don't care. Texas hasn't done anything. They haven't even looked great against teams like San Jose State and UTEP. mostly on the quarterback position as well. And it's like, yeah, you beat Sam Houston, but that's Sam Houston. If they do decently solid against Florida, I still have to bump them up. But it's like, I don't think if they rematch Ohio State right now, I don't think it's close. I don't think it is. Then I had Missouri at 17. I think Missouri's pretty solid. They beat South Carolina by about 9-ish points, and they had control of that game. I still think Missouri's good, and they haven't lost. They also beat a tough opponent in Kansas, and I think Missouri's still pretty good. But until I start moving them up, I still think I need some more quality wins and some better performances from Missouri. Then I had LSU at 16, and I was pretty happy about this because I had already started to drop LSU before they lost. I dropped them from 3 to 8 or something like that, and then they ended up losing to Ole Miss, which I also picked. I did pick Ole Miss, and LSU ended up falling to 16 for me. And I mean, that Clemson win, it just doesn't look that great, but they went on the road and did it before Clemson really fell off. But then again, how much stock do you put in that? I still think they land there for me, and so LSU is at 16. Then at number 15, I had Tennessee, and I would really like to put Tennessee up higher because I already had them at 15, but it was just really tough this week to kind of organize teams. And so Tennessee ended up falling at 15, but that win against Mississippi State was still huge, and I would have liked to move them up, but that loss does hold them back, especially with the team right ahead of them and the team that they lost to and really should have beat in Georgia. So this is kind of the section where I was kind of really struggling to put this together, and I ended up kind of being like, well, Tennessee's done decently solid. They have a solid win, but they lost to Georgia. So then Georgia's ahead of them. They did decently solid, and they beat Tennessee, did decently solid against Alabama, but lost. And then Alabama's ahead of them. In front of them is the team they lost to in Florida State, where that's where those one-loss teams kind of fell for me. And Georgia, I mean, that was rough. They haven't lost at home since before COVID, and now it happened. They lost. And to a great Alabama team, which I ended up had Alabama at 23 last week, which I did get some hate for, but I think it was a little justified because look what Alabama did, and they did great. So after they proved themselves and after they had a game, that's when I start to move them up. That's how I kind of do these rankings, by the way. It's a lot of resume based where it's like, what had Alabama done to justify them being this high last week? They hadn't, because their only achievement was that they played a Florida State team and weren't in the game. And that's why I really have a tough time putting them over Florida State. That's why they kind of hit a wall there where they might have been top 10 had Florida State not lost. I'm not entirely sure. But it's just like, I feel like the games have to matter, and Florida State absolutely dominated Alabama. So as much as you want to say in hypotheticals, which the SEC loves, if you want to say like oh, in a hypothetical, Alabama would be, in a rematch, it's like, well, you didn't. You lost to Florida State. You were never in the game. And even though it felt like that early on, they really weren't. I mean, if they don't get that punt blocked, like they weren't even in that game. It was a lot worse than the score would indicate, which is crazy because it was bad. So I feel like the games have to matter. So that's where I put Florida State. And I think this row of teams is really great. But that's where those one-loss teams kind of settled out for me. Then I had Iowa State at 11. And Iowa State, they got a lot more confidence for me because they dominated a team last week in Arizona that was pretty solid going into the game. And so I like Iowa State, and we'll see how they do going forward. But I kind of dropped them, especially after that Arkansas State game. But you know what? They proved it, and they saw that as a wake-up call, and they said, okay, we need to reevaluate, and we need to figure this out, and they did. So Iowa State lands at 11. Then I had Penn State at number 10, and Penn State actually didn't move for me. I had them at 10 last week. I still have them at 10, and honestly, they just really proved themselves last week, and I know they didn't win, but it was a game that they were really in, and maybe they should have won, and so I do like Penn State, and I do keep them at 10. I just really worry them. I worried for them in those types of matchup games. And you could argue that I should have dropped them lower. Maybe I probably should have. But I think I was really just waiting for them to play a good team and have them have a solid performance. And what really solidifies me keeping them in the top 10 was that fourth quarter where they were down 17-3 and they rallied and they got all the way back to 17. And then they got the momentum in overtime where they took the lead. And then it really felt like Penn State was finally going to do it. And then it just didn't end up working out. They ended up landing at 10. I probably could have dropped them lower, but we'll see how their season does going forward. Then I have Vanderbilt at 9. Honestly, Vanderbilt is getting so disrespected in the AP poll. It's honestly ridiculous. Vanderbilt's still really good. Pavia has been elite on the offensive side of the ball. And it's not just like South Carolina that was a good team at one point. They were ranked 11th when they beat them. And they beat them soundly, dominantly, in South Carolina's building. That's what makes it so impressive for me. So Vanderbilt's really good, and their offense is really good. We'll see how they do against Alabama, but they are at number 9. Then I had Texas Tech at 8, And Baron Morton's pretty solid. We'll see how he does coming back from that injury. Texas Tech's really good. The way they beat Utah, where even though it was close for a lot of the game, they ended up pulling away late, where it felt like they were in control for a lot of the game. Honestly, I think Texas Tech is really good, and we'll see how it goes going forward, and especially when they go on the road this week at Houston. That's going to be a really tough challenge. I think Texas Tech's going to win, but that's going to be tough. But if they win that one, then they're certainly going to keep their spot in the driver's seat of the Big 12. Then I had Indiana at 7. It was about the same spot I had them as last week. Teams kind of jumped them, and then maybe teams dropped out. Honestly, I just didn't really know what to do with them, because I think they're still really solid, but going into Iowa against that defense, it's a really tough place to play. I still think what they did against Illinois was really impressive, but Iowa was ready for it. They were ready for it, and they didn't let Indiana walk all over them like Illinois did, and I think Iowa's a pretty solid team. So Indiana just kind of ran into that area, but you know what? They made some plays in the fourth quarter, and I'm very unhappy saying this as an Iowa fan, but they did make some plays in the fourth quarter and end up finding a way to win the game, which is what great teams do. And with what they get against Illinois, that's where they land for me. Then we had Ole Miss at 6. Honestly, I really wanted to put Ole Miss higher because that win against LSU, albeit was a little lopsided because LSU shouldn't have been ranked as high as they were. And, I mean, Ole Miss is really good, and they did prove themselves. They were a little too close with Arkansas, Kentucky in back-to-back weeks, but they soundly blew out Tulane, and they were even doing alley-oops on the sidelines during the game against Tulane. That's how much they were winning by. And then they beat a really great LSU team, and they were at home, but very impressive. And Lane Kiffin's a great coach, and they got revenge against LSU's linebacker Whit Weeks for dating his daughter. So Ole Miss lands at 6 for me. Then here's my brand new top 5. Now, last week it really got turned on its head, and I ended up making a lot of moves as well, where you had a lot of movement. I mean, Georgia and Florida State were in my top 10. Now they're not even on the first 2 shelves here. So this is how my top 5 shakes out now. Texas A&M at number 5. That makes a lot of sense to me. 2 really great quality wins against Notre Dame and last week against a very underrated Auburn team. They land at 5 for me. I think Texas A&M is really good, and if they beat Mississippi State next week, I think it's only up from here for the Aggies. Then I had the Sooners at number 4, and I know it's tough without Mateer, but they should be getting him back soon, and their quality wins speak for themselves. I mean, look at the schedule on here. They beat Michigan, and they beat a really good Auburn team. Now, you don't see Auburn on here anymore. I know I ended up dropping them out. I mean, 2 losses, just a little too much, but after the 1 loss, I was still keeping them in. Like, Oklahoma's really good, and you see how Michigan's still climbing. Oklahoma really controlled that game against Michigan. Oklahoma's really good. And so they land at number 4, and they're really going to be great when Mateer comes back. Then I had Ohio State at number 3. This is the first time I've really dropped them, and maybe I shouldn't have. Maybe I'm overreacting. I don't know. They played really great against Washington, and the offense was a little slow, and they were making sloppy mistakes early on that I think better teams won't let them do, and still being in such a controlled state of the game. Like, Ohio State was so in control despite making sloppy mistakes early, and they ended up overcoming that, but that's not going to fly against better teams. I don't think they would do a lot of the things they did against better teams, by the way. But honestly, I just think the teams ahead of them have either done more or have just been more impressive or have a more impressive win. And that's where I ended up making the switch. I've had Ohio State at number 1 for a while. But I end up dropping them to Oregon at number 2. Honestly, Oregon's really impressive, and I was high on Oregon for a while, but ended up slowly dropping them because there were teams that had done more. But that Penn State game was really impressive, and honestly, the way that they ended up taking the lead 17-3, and then they ended up choking a little bit, but the way that they were able to rally and the way Dante Moore played in overtime bodes a lot of confidence for this team, especially against a Penn State team that was really good. Then I had Miami at number 1. Miami is the best team in college football right now. I have to say it. And, I mean, you look at their resume. Notre Dame, 1. South Florida, 1. Florida, 1. And not just 1. Some of those games, like South Florida, they dominated. Florida, maybe the final score will indicate it was a little more. They didn't necessarily dominate for a lot of the game, but it never felt like it was out of hand. Like, Miami's really good. And if they beat Florida State next week, it's really going to be hard to argue against this. Like, I don't know how you would. I feel like Miami is the best team in college football right now, so that's how my top 25 shakes out. It had a lot of movement, so it was a really difficult ranking to make this week because there was a lot of spots I had to fill, and it really got tossed on its head from last week. That's the big thing, because upsets, and then the ranked teams played each other, and so you got to figure out, how do you evaluate them? How much did they go up? How much does the losing team go down? Things like that were really tough to evaluate, but this is what I kind of landed on. So that is the Ben Buzz Top 25 going into Week 6.